OGs.
Okay, we are live. This is Coffee with Carla, and I have a special co-host tonight, and that's Justin Youngquist.
Hello.
And our very special guest, we're so glad you took some time to talk with us, and that's Tanner Holmes out of Southern Oregon. Is there a town, or is just you just refer to it as Southern Oregon?
I always call it Southern Oregon, but just honestly with my social media, I just never pinpointed it specifically. But I'm from Jacksonville. It's a really small town outside of Medford. Medford's kind of like the big city in our part of the state, right off Interstate 5. But we're 15 minutes off the freeway. We kind of just have like a little shop here, and this has lived in the same place my whole life, and kind of just raced around this area.
Wow. So would Southern Oregon be your home track then?
Yeah, Southern Oregon Speedway, and then we always ran, for sprint car stuff, like we always ran Cottage Grove a lot, Coos Bay, now Roseburg. Like those would kind of be our other places close by. But yeah, Southern Oregon is like where I grew up watching race cars and kind of fell in love with the sport.
So when and where did your racing actually start then?
So there's like a little kart track actually here right next to the big track. So that's about 25 minutes from my house. And I never, I didn't come from like a racing family. I always tell people it's kind of impressive that like we ended up going as far into this as we are, because my dad wasn't a race car driver. My mom wasn't involved at all. I feel like at most they were like basic NASCAR fans, maybe in the 80s and 90s, and knew like knew very little about the sport. But just like I said, we're basic fans of like NASCAR, but not really dirt racing. But my dad had a friend, and we have a family business here. So they were working together actually with a client in town, and the guy actually happened to have some outlaw carts. And my dad's friend was more into the dirt racing deal. And so he basically convinced him to get his hands on these carts that were for sale. And that's how we got into it. So we just had this old outlaw cart, probably like a early 2000s, just like kind of, almost looked like a yard cart a little bit. And they just had like these little Briggs and Stratton motors on them that are loud as can be. And you have a little spine seat in there that you sit in, and just like, you just go. So that was 2008, 2009. I got started out here, but I made my first laps, and we had no idea what we were getting into. I mean, it was a great time for kart racing because it was very healthy back then, as it's healthy as now. But we just ran a couple races, and just we had like a little snowmobile trailer that we had already had from doing that, and just like like started building this little racing operation to run the youngest classes. So it was really fun and pretty quick, just as most do. You get hooked, and we got hooked, and then all of a sudden your 5 races you run in a year turns into 10, then to 15 to 20, and now upwards we run 50, 60 or 70 shows between our winter and our outdoor stuff.
Wow. And your whole family's involved?
Yeah. My younger sister Carly races, and then we kind of go to the track as a family. Here and there, one or two of us might not make it or whatever. But at one point, both of my siblings, Carly still races, but my older sister, who isn't really seen as much in what we do, but she's always there. She even raced a little bit and tried it out. So it kind of has been a family thing. And, we don't really do at this point, we don't really do anything else. And even back then we didn't either. We all kind of tried some different sports, and nothing ever really landed. So racing kind of just turned into our deal.
Wow. So is your dad your crew chief?
For all my kart stuff, he was. So I give him a lot of credit. I think it's people, and now that I'm old enough, I have my own outlaw cart, and like this last weekend, my sister drove it, and I had to set it up for her, and I set it up for myself when I run. But like, I have a lot more respect for him now as I gotten older, realizing how tough it was, not being a race car driver, how he had to learn to set up my cars, because there's just so much knowledge that you need to have, and how people had advantages on me, that, maybe their dad was a race car driver in some form, no matter what it was, or a crew chief. And so, yeah, so he spent a lot of time reading books, on how to make a car go basically faster on a track, and spent many hours and many nights. I just walk in his room and ask him a question, and he'd be like, he had notes and everything. So he spent a lot of time, and that helped me progress very quickly, probably from like 2009 to 2015, when we raced like a lot together. And then as I got older in the outlaw kart stuff, I started driving for QRC, so we didn't get to kind of work together as much in the older stuff, in the karts. But then as I got back into the sprint car, I've had a crew chief since I started. So but he's learned a lot too. So we kind of are all working on it together. But I do give him a lot of credit, because he's very knowledgeable from coming from basically nothing, nothing on what even stagger is or air pressure, what you would even do. Like no clue, just a guy off the street. And, definitely like put in a ton of effort to get us to where we won quite a few races.
Has he ever jumped in the cart? Has he ever jumped in the cart or car?
No, he hasn't. There's one good story. So he did drive actually my dad's friend that convinced him to buy me the race car when we started back then. His name was Bob. So Bob had like a little 4-cylinder, like I think it's called like a Pro Stock or something way back in. This is probably like 2011, and they had a play day. So my dad drove it, and he just did a couple laps. And not ever racing, it felt like he was going really fast. I mean, and you're watching him out there, and he's probably going half throttle at most half throttle, and even like all over the place, just trying to make laps. And we're like, he's about to wad this thing up. Sure enough, he spun out through the infield, took the nose off the thing, jumped the berm, like only going like half throttle. So that's his one and done racing story. But he's we call him, he's our trucker. He helps us truck to the races and does a lot of driving of the rig and whatnot, but not much on track behind the wheel action.
All right, what were you gonna say, Justin?
I was gonna ask, because you were talking about like getting started and not having like your family didn't do it. So like for me, my dad raced forever, and like it's just what we did. But so who was kind of the person or people that like inspired you to continue doing it, to like grow it into what you have now?
I think it was more like, maybe like a lot of people, like we ended up just having so many racetrack friends too. So like as much as my dad was like trying to learn it on his own, like we ended up leaning on a lot of different people too. So like the first ever race we went to, we actually went to just watch, and it was the craziest thing. So like like when I was younger, I used to get really bad bloody noses. So I got a bad bloody nose at the racetrack actually. And we happened just to meet these people. And when that happened, that helped me take care of that or whatever. And they became our friends that we started parking next to when we went to the races. So for a couple of years, we had just some guys here in Southern Oregon that like helped us with setup, and they were in the classes above us. So like we really got information like that. And then as we started traveling, we met people, and we went to Roseburg, which is just an hour north of me. And then we started meeting friends down in Red Bluff. And so sure enough, you kind of build like this circle of people that are, maybe running the same type of car as you, or like I said, the biggest is just people that were in the classes above you, because the nice part is you can be friends at the racetrack and you don't have to race against each other. That's, it sucks when you're trying to get help from someone in your class, and sure enough, you end up in an incident where you have to run side by side with them. Even when you're kids, it just happens. So, so for us, like we just happened to make friends where we went. And it kind of just worked. Not necessarily like a lot of people, but you just maybe meet that one or two, and you kind of work together, and you can learn a lot quicker because one guy makes a mistake, and then you both know what not to do, and stuff like that. But as we grow, exactly, and so I think that's the main thing I always encourage people when they're getting into racing. And if it's just them, like maybe it's not even them with their family, is like just make as many connections as you can, and like help people with their cars and like learn, because there's so much knowledge that can take you farther than when you're trying to literally do it all by yourself and have no clue where to go.
Okay, here's a big one. Why don't you just take us through 22? What did you do? Where did you do it? And how did you do it?
Oh, 2022. So we ended up running a lot out here on the West Coast. Originally, we were planning on going to the Midwest a little bit and racing, but it was our year like kind of just went upside down early on. We kind of started our year out in California. We're down in California a little bit because that's kind of what starts earlier. And then the Northwest, we had a lot of rainouts. So like, I don't think the first even 360 race in the Northwest happened until like the end of May. So we kind of would have had quite a few weeks quiet if we wouldn't have traveled a little bit. And so we went down there and had a couple good runs, and it was looking like, man, our year was off to a good start. And like, we went to a couple new tracks. I ran Placerville for the first time. I ran Stockton for the first time. We ran like Tulare, Ocean, a couple places I didn't have a lot of experience at, but had been to, and like had some okay finishes against good California competition. And then like the middle of May hit, and it's just like things like started going really wrong. Like we had a big crash in Tulare, and then I think we had obviously our Dirt Cup where we went up there and we had 2 bad nights, and then somehow made the show, but just like had like a weekend, like we finished 11th in the Dirt Cup, which is okay, but like our weekend was not good. So, we just had a lot of that. And then it kind of built up to, we're end of June. We've probably crashed 2 cars during the year. 2 cars we crashed. I hadn't really won it. We had not won any races. We had a couple good runs and like our speed was kind of there, but like things just kind of kept like falling apart. And then Carly, my sister, broke her back at Cottage Grove in July. So like our season just like kind of, we're like, all right, this is not good. Like maybe we need to do something else or what, whatever. So we took a couple weeks off to regroup because Carly had that bad incident and we like really couldn't travel with, with her like that. And she's a big part of our team too. She helps on the car and like she can do, she can do everything. She can drive the car, she can work on the car, she can wash the car, she can do whatever. And so she helps a lot. So we took a couple weeks off and we ended up not going to the Midwest like we originally planned. And that was probably the best thing, just how it worked out. Sometimes things just work out how they're supposed to. And so we ran the 10,000 to win show at Skagit. We came back like 3 weeks later, ran second, like kind of had something for Starks. So like that meant we had some speed. And then we won Sunset Speedway Park because we were just going to run the whole Speed Week the next night or the next show during the week. And then the rest of Speed Week Northwest, we ran fairly well. So like finally we were just getting going kind of more towards the middle of the year, which is what we needed because we were so close. We just never had consistent like speed or runs and things didn't just go how it went, just racing. And from there, we just kept running. So we started winning races. We ended up winning Western Sprint Tour points, which there wasn't like a crazy amount of cars, but it was like we ran all the points and we did that, won a couple races. And then everything kind of came to a good end. Like we went down to California at the end of the year and ran top 5 at Fall Nationals, which had 60 or 70 cars. And then we almost won a night of Trophy Cup. So like if our year could have started in July and then ran a whole year, I think, it could have been, we could have really added up some good stats at the end of the season and even had a couple runs. I think we ran like 11th with the Outlaws too at Skagit, which was solid. So just kind of built up and was really close. And a lot of it was like throughout the year, our qualifying speed got better. So that was, if you can't qualify in a wing sprint car, it doesn't matter how good you can race or how fast you are. If you can't qualify, you're basically behind the 8 ball. So especially with the Outlaws or any of those guys. So once we kind of worked on that, like our results just really started to add up because we started farther up front. We were just in more position to be successful.
Right. Well, what kind of inventory do you have? How many cars do you have? What motor platforms are you running?
So we're doing 360 and 410 stuff. Out here, we had a limited for a little bit. I started in the limited class back in 2017 and ran that for a while just because it was the cost and for transitioning from a kart to a sprint car. But we're kind of all out of limited stuff now. We kind of had one in the garage just to like have something to race, like because unfortunately, like everything is so spread out here. You have to travel all the way up to Skagit and Grace Harbor to run weekly 360 stuff, and then the scattered stuff we have in Oregon, and then you have to go all the way to California. So we had a limited to run a couple weekends, and then mainly run 360, and then the scattered 410 shows we could run, but. Luckily, with where things are at and what Peter Murphy's trying to do up there in California, I guess with NARC, and we can run a lot more 410 shows and we can run a lot more 360 shows with some of the speed weeks they have. So right now we have 3 cars for this year. We're gonna have a 360, a 410 car, and then we'll have a spare. So we're looking good there. And then we just have our normal engine packages for the 360 and 410 to race and try to, hopefully run our schedule right now. I think it's a little over 60 shows, but you never know. By the time we have rainouts and whatnot, like I think it'll be safe to say we'll probably hit about 50 sprint car races this year between out here on the West Coast. And then if everything goes to plan, we're hoping to go to the Midwest and run a little bit too and try to get our feet wet out there.
How do you decide what your schedule is going to be? Do you make that decision or?
Yeah, we kind of have a rough idea just from years past, like. So when the whole COVID thing happened in 2020, I guess it would have been, we ended up traveling to the Midwest just because that's where we could still race. And they like ASCS had a huge speed week. So like we could go out there and race and run like so many nights. And like, I think it was like 2 weeks, we could run like eight or 9 races and we couldn't really do anything out here or it was like very limited. So we're like, all right, we're just going to go do that and run. And then we'll get to see all these new tracks. And luckily, we had 2 360s at the time, so it made sense, and we could run some races on the way out, run the speed week, and come back. And so once we did that, now we kind of had like this. It's kind of like a weird. We have like just by looking at the schedules, we have like last year's schedule is very similar to what this year's schedule was. If everything would have went to plan, so like we have this thing where we run now through Dirt Cup out here, and then try to go to the Midwest. Hopefully to then run Knoxville Nationals and get some seat time out there before then. So it's just like run up until the big race out here, which is kind of Dirt Cup. And then there's more shows and whatnot you can run. But We want to focus on 410 stuff. And so the Midwest has a lot of that. So once you get through that, go out there and then try to run, like I said, Knoxville and all that. And mainly it's just if we are going to travel that far, it's where we can run the most amount of races in the short amount of time. So we don't have to be gone as long and we can kind of get the most bang for your buck. You don't want to go out there and run just like, one Saturday night and then wait to race again on the next Saturday. It's like, we're going to go out there, try to run 3 nights a weekend and make it the most of our trip and then come home, take some more time off to prepare for like whatever our next slate of races are.
Yeah. If you had to pick one track on the West Coast, what would your favorite be?
Ooh, that's there's a lot of good ones. I don't even know if you could consider this a West Coast track, but I was actually just looking back at some old footage. One time in 2020, we traveled over to, it was in Montana actually. I ran this track called Great Falls Electric City Speedway, which doesn't have a lot of sprint car racing or whatever, but I ran there one weekend and there was a couple Northwest guys that went over there with us. It was their big like Labor Day show and the place was phenomenal. That's a place that really sticks out as far as like a really neat racetrack. So it's not necessarily right here on the coast, but that's a place I'd like to get back to. It was just really slick. It had 2 different corners, like wide as can be. Kind of that's my style. I like a really wide racetrack, really slick. I don't mind a cushion. It's not necessarily my favorite thing, but like this place in particular had a cushion on one end and then like was just bone slick to basically straight to the fence in the other. So you kind of had to run it differently, set your car a little bit different up for both corners. But as far as stuff close to home, Southern Oregon Speedway and Cottage Grove, honestly, usually are pretty good if they get them right. And then I, of course, love running Skagit. Skagit's always a lot of fun. And when they can get it to kind of like slow down a little bit and you really have to start like pedaling it. And it kind of gets finally like, I think like Dirt Cup this last year, like it almost got basically to the fence in both corners or close, that's really fun. So can't really, it's hard to beat that.
So have you ran in the Midwest? Do you have a favorite Midwest track then?
Yeah, this one place I ran in Kansas, it was in Kansas City. It's called Lakeside, and the Outlaws usually have a date there, and then they run a lot of ASCS shows. But it's a small half mile, and it's really cool. And part of it is just like when you travel and you run really well at a place, usually you tend to like it. Like if a driver wins a lot at a track, they'd be lying if they said they didn't like the place. So when we went back there, it was like the first track I ever ran in the Midwest, and so I think with ASCS we ran like 7th or 8th or something. And but when that happened, that was really cool because we hadn't really ran back there. So and then I went back again. So I ran there twice. But it was a really neat, and it was like my first time really on like a legit half mile. And so yeah, and then it's hard to beat places like Knoxville. I ran there a little bit just for 360 Nationals and some of the tracks kind of in that area. But mainly what's cool about those places too is of course it's hard to beat the history and just like where you're at. When you realize, you're at Knoxville, or I'm sure if you go to Eldora or Williams Grove, like just being there is pretty special.
And if you could make Huset's, that'd be pretty cool too.
Yeah, I have that on the schedule, hopefully, just since it's right up the road from Knoxville this year. So if things go to plan, we'll get to run there 3 or 4 times, kind of back to back, because obviously Huset's runs on Sunday, and get some like serious seat time before the Nationals, because it's not obviously a race you want to go and just show up and give it your best shot. You really want to be prepared.
Yeah. Well, I definitely hope you get to do that this summer. Make that a plan.
Yeah. Sure. Hopefully we're working that way. And, I think things should go good. Like I said, last year would have been fine. It's just, as long as you don't have too many catastrophes and, catastrophes at the wrong time. But, if our season goes smoothly, we should be good.
When you talk about goals, is your goal overall for like going into 2023, or is your goal specific for a particular race or a particular racetrack? How do you set goals, or do you have goals?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I haven't really even thought about a lot of goals for this year. I mean, I think you have like your long-term goals of like where you want to go, and how I always just look at it is, I try to actually start taking things more like one race at a time and try not to get too far ahead of myself. Because I think it's easy to always like I don't want to say wishing the race weekend away and then on to the next, but like I think it's easy to get in the mindset of it, of just like, you're focused on something too far away. So for us, it's like, maybe some of the more smaller races and stuff that maybe don't mean as much, that are kind of whatever, or you expect to win. You just try to take those as much like learning experience for your bigger races. So like if we run Skagit before Dirt Cup, like we want to go out and win that night at Skagit, but we also need to learn as much as we can before the big race that we have coming up, and getting our cars right and whatnot. So for me, I think this year it's like more about just trying to take it one week at a time, like I'm a big routine guy. So like it sounds dumb, but like I like to have a good week in the shop and get things ready and get everything organized. So like when we're ready to leave town, like we go, and then like we're focused on the races that weekend, and then you come home and you repeat the process. You get the car washed right away, you get things in order, and it's a lot of that. So for me, it's just about like focusing on that race weekend and accomplishing what we're there to accomplish. And then once that's done, then you look at the next week on the schedule. And of course, you're always preparing ahead of time. But yeah, I think for it's just about keeping the process that way. And basically, for me, every time I go to the races, we want to win. So if I have a 66 rate, if I have a 60 race schedule this year, my goal is to win 60 races. So
There you
it's
go.
of course, if you're running points or something for whatever, then you obviously want to win a championship and whatnot. But I don't think this year we have no points racing, which is nice. I like to just go. It's nice to go and win races. When you get points racing, it's easy to get caught up and like it's just a different mentality in how you do things. So
Yeah.
it's nice to just go and try to win.
It sounds like
I
when
feel
you're
like
home, go ahead, Justin.
I was just gonna say, I feel like too, like you're talking about like expectations and kind of setting those for yourself. I feel like I used to think that I had to like I had to have this goal to like do whatever. So you have this plan, but then if like one thing goes off the rails, it kind of frustrates you. Like you're like, oh, like that didn't go the way I wanted to. So now it just like clouds everything else that you have to do, which is
Yeah.
like that just builds more frustration because it's not happening the way that you like. Even just a race, like you're like, oh, okay, I start like third in this heat race. If the guy slides up on the bottom going into one, then I'm gonna pass. Then it doesn't happen, and you're like,
Yeah.
then you're frustrated right away. Like it's kind of the same, I guess,
For
bigger
sure.
picture. That thing, it doesn't go that way, and it just totally clouds the rest of what you're trying to do overall.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, and like a good example, like for me, so like in the wintertime, we still run outlaw cart stuff because I drive for QRC, and so I have a great deal with them and they help me out. So like we points race in the wintertime and just the cart stuff, what we've always done. And so when I do that, it's way different because, like I said, you're points racing. So you're constantly like
Mhm.
you might run second some nights because you're not going to do what it takes to win because you want to get the points you already have or whatever. It's just how it would be if
Mhm.
you're running, a point season in the sprint car. And so, like, yeah, I think, like Justin said, literally it helps with the expectation side of things because you just focus one race at a time. And then I think, too, it makes it easier when you have your bad nights because it's going to happen. The more races you run, the more probably bad nights you're going to have, or, it's just how it works. But it's easier to put those behind you. So, like, you just take it one race at a time. Like, our goal is to win. It's like, all right, tonight we didn't win. Here's how we do. Here's what we could have done to win, or maybe here's where we went off the rails. And the nights when you run 12th or 15th or 18th, like it's just going to happen. But it's easier to put those behind you because your expectation is always to expect the best of yourself, and that's and that's not just at the track. That's like how we prepare. That's how we maintenance. Like we don't cut corners. It's just the whole process. But yeah, I think it's always just to go there and win. And then when we don't, we figure out why we did it and try to take that information and knowledge and like what we did wrong with the car or what I did wrong behind the wheel, like to the next place and carry that to the next bigger and better race so we can try to shine on the bigger stages.
Right. So it sounds like you're in the shop a lot. Is
Yes.
there a specific shop night, or is it just like a little bit every day as you go during the week when you're home?
Um, yeah, I think like during the off season, like this off season, we're probably a tiny bit behind because we did Chili Bowl and we did some other stuff. So like we're still in the process of getting everything ready. But I would say like once the weeks hit, it's like perfect if we didn't have to travel too far on the weekend is like try to be washed up Sunday night or get the car washed, get everything cleaned up, and then try to get as far as you can Monday. And then maybe like Tuesday and Wednesday can be lighter. But ideally, I'm always about trying to get things done as quick as possible. So usually Carly and I, or even my dad and I, and depending on who raced that weekend, but try to get stuff done as early in the week, and then try to be all loaded up, by usually Thursday and stuff. Because if we have to like travel to Skagit, or if we do have to travel a little bit of a distance, north or south, we have to leave a day early, just because of where we're located. Skagit's like a solid 8 hours for us, so we have to
Yeah.
travel way up there. And if we're going to California, we have to leave like maybe if we race on Friday, we got to leave Thursday night, or we got to leave really early Friday morning. So our weeks can get really short really quick by the time we have to sometimes travel to and from the races, which is what makes it a little bit more difficult for us. But that's why it's just key just to get up, get going. And, the sooner we get it done, the more little bit of time we might have during the week to cross our T's and dot our I's.
Wow. You talk about routine. Is a workout for you in that daily or weekly routine?
Yeah, yeah, if I can, I wanted to be more consistent this year, so I'm kind of working on that, but like I'm the type of person that's really good early in the morning. So I'm like ideally, a perfect if I have a perfect week, Monday through Thursday, up between 5 and 6 a.m., go work out right away. And get that done because I can't like at a certain after a certain time I can't do it because then like it's daylight. So but yeah, try to work out maybe, maybe two, three, four, preferably 3 or 4 times a week when I get going good. And then you have your race on the weekends and your travel day or whatever. But yeah, so I try to stay in a routine. I'm like definitely like I have like my own little schedule. This is what needs to be done. Here's like the order of it. And when I don't have that, I get really out of sorts. So that's the type of personality type of person I am. And then I don't work well at night. So like once I hit like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, like my brain doesn't really work. So yeah, I always try to be accomplished early in the morning because that's just how I'm built and try to do that throughout the week, even race season. Of course, well, definitely during race season and then through the off season, definitely at least try to stay pretty stagnant and exercise. And, that I think that really helps for, behind the wheel activities.
Wow. Well, your dedication is impressive, I think. Do you work on your core,
Thank you.
your arms? Where does a racer really need to work probably to make sure that's the strongest?
For like a while, if I'm being honest, I never was really like super specific. Like I just kind of lifted and like tried to build strength. But more than ever lately, I feel like I've been working on endurance stuff because I think, like I'm exercising just to like for specifically for my racing. I mean, I'm doing it for myself, but so like I'm not trying to like be the biggest guy or whatever, look like a bodybuilder. Like for me, I just want to be able to get in my car and like not have anything hinder me. Cause like if you have a 40 lap race and you start slowing yourself down behind the wheel on lap 30, if we have no yellows, like you're hurting yourself. So yeah, I would say like endurance things, just because once you get especially into the 360 or the 410 stuff, like we ran with the Outlaws. I think the first weekend I ever ran with the World of Outlaws at Skagit, we did not this last year, but it would have been 2021. The final night was 40 laps and we had no yellows and we finished it in like 7 minutes, straight green. So like you got to be able to do that. And in Skagit's not even a track. I mean, it's a tough track, but there's places that get even tougher. You can go to California and when the track's rough, or these little bull rings when it's just mash the gas. Like there's different places that wear you out quicker. But I just feel like that's really important. So I feel like I've been trying to prioritize that more lately. Just trying to do things that I can just go the distance longer because at the end of the day, that's really all that matters is just being able to run the whole race and not get fatigued. Because of if you're feeling it behind the wheel, you're definitely not going to be able to be 100%.
Right. So when's the first race?
So the first race is March 21st down at Tulare Thunder Bowl with the High Limit. So the new series that Larson and Brad Sweet are putting on.
Ah,
So that's going to be a big race, which we're excited for. I kind of wish it wasn't our first one, but I mean, Tulare's a place I have laps and whatnot. So probably going to be,
Yeah,
we're well.
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say you almost won. You almost won down there.
No,
Like,
exactly. No, it'll be good. And we're actually taking, so we have our car that's going to be our 410 car this year, but we're actually taking our 360 car down there because that's the one in our program that we ran with at Tulare last year. So we're hoping that'll help us get going that first night, and then we'll kind of readjust things from there. But yeah, it's definitely important to know your equipment because every little car is different, and I mean, every setup works a little differently on different frames and components, and yeah, it's just you gotta be on top of that.
well, I've been aware of these books, but the term now is the notebook. So
Yeah.
does a racer keep a notebook per car, like your 360 and your 410 and your cart, or do you keep it specific for the track, or when you've been there before? How do you manage volumes maybe of notebooks?
Yeah, I probably, being honest, I probably should take a little bit better notes sometimes. Like we kind of have like our basically ours would look like, okay, here was our setup this night. Like here's where we started, here's where we ended. Was it a 360? Was it a 410? And what was the track? And then maybe like if you can try to add in notes on the characteristics of the track. So maybe because the whole point I feel like of a notebook too is when you're looking back, if you're lost or like, if we're running Silver Dollar, for example, which was like a place that was tough for us. We have a couple notes on nights where we really struggled, And so you try to, and you try to describe the track and why we were struggling and what the car was doing. So maybe then as you're getting quicker and whatnot, you have that notebook on what not to do. Like a lot of people always have the notebook on, how to go fast, but I think it's just as important to have a notes on why you were slow, because it's easy to get mixed up. So just try to have things that can spark memory, take you back to that moment or that night, so then you can remember what you were feeling then to help you with now. And so yeah, like all of our sprint car stuff, we have a lot more notes. My carts and whatnot, a lot of it is just, it's a little bit simpler, so it's kind of all in the up here, which is not, it's not as reliable. But yeah, no, I would say all notebook stuff is mainly on setups. I don't really know anything as far as the races go. If anything, I feel like it's more about like watching footage back and trying to do that like maybe during the week, or I like to do it kind of hopefully the night before the races, because I just like it to be fresh. I think it's easy sometimes to forget, but if you can like watch races before, kind of like is that last minute preparation before you actually, get unloaded the next day and kind of get up to the track and you're kind of like in the zone ready to go.
So are you
I
watching
was gonna
races?
say, like,
Go ahead.
you have
Go ahead.
a digital notebook, like all the pictures and like video and stuff. Like it's all, you can probably pinpoint like, oh, that right there, like, oh, that's where that happened. Like you have so much, like even on board too. Like how many GoPros are on your car? Like two, three,
Yeah, no,
one, seven.
yeah, at least one every time I hit the track, which that's like something I forget, like I do watch a lot of footage in that way. And that's just more because part of I'm editing the video and whatnot. But yeah, usually we have like two onboards on the car. So you can pretty much not miss anything for the most part on like what's happening with my car and how it's handling and, the cars around me and stuff. And maybe if someone's faster and like how they passed me and like what they were doing, maybe how their line was different than mine and stuff like that. And I think also as a racer, like you don't realize even how your brain is processing that sometimes. Like when you're, as a racer, once you've been doing this so long, you watch footage and you're just naturally actually going through all that stuff in your head and you don't realize it. So, and I think as
Mhm.
race fans, same thing, people that are just involved with the sport. So yeah, having our onboards and stuff is very crucial. And then, of course, now we have Flow and Dirt Vision and all the weekly broadcasters, so we can pretty much go back and watch just about everything. And I think that's even important on race nights, and something I feel like we need to do better this year is, if I can, I need to be sitting in like before qualifying. And this is just how I work. But like if I can have the phone right in front of me watching the 5 qualifiers ahead of me, I'm probably going to run a better lap because I'm going to be way more confident in what I need to do. I think sometimes it's easy to be sitting there and start second guessing what you need to do or whatnot. But
Mhm.
if you can literally watch what the guys are doing and how hard they're running the car and where they're running, you're basically set. So I think that's like very important that drivers don't take advantage of. And I noticed a lot of guys at the higher level, these outlaw teams and stuff, like I'm watching those guys do that as they're watching their competitors.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I've seen that a lot more now since like Flow and Dirt Vision and everything are so instant and have everything. It's like you watch them and they've got, some sort of something in front of them to see, whether you're at a track that's just like My Race Pass or something like that, you can at least have something. But yeah, the
Yeah.
video for sure. I
Yeah.
agree.
One, I
Yeah.
think it's easy too, even like tracks are constantly changing. Like, you watch a lot, like maybe, there'll be 30 qualifiers at Skagit and maybe 20 of them are all running around the top. And then like this happened, I think it was at Dirt Cup or whatever. And then like last minute, someone starts trying because the track's falling off. Someone dives to the bottom in 1 and 2. And
Hmm.
if you don't have a crew guy or you don't have your phone there with you to know that someone did that and that maybe that worked or that was faster or some guy jumped up late, like all you know is the numbers and what they're announcing. So like it's very important to have crew guys that are helping you and stuff like that, especially for qualifying, as that sets you up for most of the night. But there's a lot of times when, because the later you go in the order, most nights if a track's falling off, like you kind of have to get a little bit desperate to try things to gain speed because
Uh-huh.
you're at a disadvantage. So a lot of times you see guys just kind of go out and do what everyone was doing that wasn't working because they have no idea. And that's no fault of their own. That I've done it a lot. It's just you got to have people that are helping you and you can have the broadcast. It's very helpful.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
does that throw you
Good
off to
feedback.
watch other racers on the track that you're going to go on? I mean, like to review a race afterwards. Are you only clued in on you, or do you watch what other racers are doing as well?
Yeah, I feel like you definitely want to watch. I mean, for me, I probably am like I said, I'm watching my onboards a lot, and I probably need to. I need to get over a little bit myself. Like if I don't run well one night, I hate watching the highlights because I don't want to see like what it's hard to just watch in general, but it is valuable to see. So yeah, I would say like for me, I try to really use my onboards, which is good because then I can actually see the race, where a lot of times too, if you aren't running good, it's helpful to see what the guys up front are doing, but at the same, like that's all you really can see, because if you're not running good enough, usually you're not even maybe in the live stream or whatever.
Right.
So but like it is really nice, especially when we go and run with the Outlaws and whatnot, we can go and they have all their highlights available on YouTube, and you can go and at least see what those guys are doing, because what's big in 410 racing, I feel like maybe compared to the 360 stuff, is guys are always moving around and changing of lines, and they're confident enough in their car to be able to do all that. So I think as like you get towards the top levels of sprint car racing, there's just so much more going on track, and I think that as you move up that direction, it's very key to be able to do that yourself and constantly be fast, kind of basically changing around all the time.
Yeah. Do you have a mentor?
Well, my crew chief is Brian Crockett, and he's been very helpful, mainly because he's drove, he's raced too. I think it's harder when if you have a crew chief that just sets up your car. That's good because they can make the car go fast, but obviously they can't help you with the driving side of things. But for me, I do have I have a lot of friends that race and whatnot, so I feel like you're kind of always bouncing around ideas and things that worked, or but for the most part, it sounds dumb, but I think as far as just going fast in some areas, like it's just about getting your car good enough to be able to do it. I think a lot of people are capable of going fast in racing, but a lot of it in wing sprint cars is having the horsepower and getting your race car good enough to go around the track and be able to do what you want to do.
And how much is the communication between you and Brian? Is that
A lot. Yeah, no, all throughout the night, and even everyone on our team, like we kind of all try to stay on the same page on. And the nice thing is like, so he helps set up our stuff at the track, and then I do everything in the shop. So like I know what I'm unloading and like where we're at, which is much in the past, like before I had gained some of that knowledge, was good too, because then I just didn't know and I just went. But it is nice too. I feel like there's actually an extra layer of confidence, like when you have, we like how we scale our race cars, we go through them, we have like kind of a whole checklist. So like when you go through that checklist and you're ready to go, it feels, you feel more confident. You're like, man, this is gonna rip. Like we ran this. Like for example, we had a really good thing we kind of found at Skagit that ran well, even 360 and 410. So like when we showed up there, I felt like, man, we had a really good piece. We're unloading what works, or what I knew worked from last time. So I think that that's very helpful to have, and then to have that communication and bouncing ideas off is very good too. I think it's a lot harder if you're a driver and you're setting up your car by yourself. That there's definitely, I mean, there's some good to it, but there's also a lot of downside, especially if you're like me. I like second guess myself a lot, so it's easy for me to be sitting and staging and be like, man, did I really just do the right decision?
Are you saying you're a
I feel like
perfectionist?
too.
I probably am in some, only in a couple areas, but it's more just like for me, I just get indecisive. It actually sometimes, depending on what it is, if it's like set up, I'm not 100% confident because I haven't always done it. So it's easy to second guess what you're doing, but it's nice when you're working with someone else, like let them make those big decisions, and then you just go out there and you got what you got.
So
I feel
what's your
like too, you
biggest?
get so
Go ahead.
in like your lane of doing things that you have that other person, like Brian, right, or whoever. You have that other person to bounce it off of, like, well, this would work a little better, or I did this, a month ago, or something, like somebody else just to bounce it off of, because you get so like in your head about what you know.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to get like a little, I hate to say, like even like emotional about it. Like for example, if your car's too tight and like maybe you didn't run a good lap, like you come off the track and you're immediately trying to make changes to loosen up your car. But like when you have another person there, or someone that can, especially if they're like Brian's very level-headed and calm, like he doesn't really, I
Mm-hmm.
think, he doesn't really get worked up, and he also doesn't get down. Like it's always, we kind of just stay. And I feel like I'm that type of person as well. But so like if I was setting on my car, maybe I would get like really emotional about what's going on and try to make all these changes real quick, where he like likes to step back and assess the situation, and like let's really try to find what our problem is and just go about it and then make a decision. It's not about doing things
Mm-hmm.
right away. So I think it's really important to have people like that on your team, because sometimes it's not what you think. There's a lot of things that can cause a problem for a sprint car to not go around the track right. And then also there's maybe 5 ways to fix the problem. And, one of them has the least side effects, and you got to know what that is.
Uh-huh.
But it's easy when you're just doing it all yourself, or when you're just frustrated in the moment, to get out and get farther off track. And then you're just out in no man's land.
Mhm.
Tell us about the big race that you won on the way to Chili Bowl this year.
Okay, so we ran. So there was this outlaw cart race in Shawnee, Oklahoma, which was like an hour and a half from Tulsa. And being big into carts and stuff, and like I said, my relationship with QRC, I really wanted to go out there and run it. For myself, for it paid really well as well. We were already going to make the trip out, but QRC doesn't have a whole lot of cars out there. It's just there's some different manufacturers. So I was like, man, I'd really like to go out there and run good for them. That'd be cool, and see a new racetrack. And then also, we have a lot of fans in the area from just the messages we had received, because there's a big karting community kind of there in the Oklahoma area. So went out. It was like a big 3-day show. Racetrack was nuts. Really banked, kind of like a bull ring. We'd seen a lot of cool videos from it, and it almost like it was really slick, and it just like would develop a pretty good cushion on the fence. So like kind of not really my slick is my style, but like I said, the cushion deal is hit or miss. So we went out there. There was like 70 cars in my class, and there was a lot of cars in general. I think there was like 350 between all the classes.
Wow.
And it was nuts. It was a really fun 3 days. Ended up, we qualified okay. We won our heat race, won our qualifier. So like we gained enough points to where we were on the front row of the 50 lap feature. And I think I was next to Jason McDougal. And luckily, like throughout the weekend, the hard part about the kart stuff, we're in like the sprint car, we're always going to new tracks, but in the outlaw kart, we kind of just have the same couple places we run out here, because there's not as many tracks. So it's weird for us to kind of go to a new place and really have to like start trying a lot of different things. So that place was so much different. We really got way out in left field with our setup, because it was just so slick, and there was such a lack of grip, and it was almost like you're racing on ice all the time, with just the material and how everything was shaped. So got out there, and like I actually had some help from one of my friends that was he didn't make it in the show, so he had tried some stuff with his car that we did for the feature. And finally, we got my race car to go around the track really well. So we led all 50 laps, and won. It was called the manufacturer's throwdown. It was a big outlaw kart race, so it was fun. I definitely want to go back there, and it helped make our trip all worth it. If we're already going to Chili Bowl, we might as well go run this big kart race and support them and what they're trying to do to grow the sport.
And that was like 5,000 to win, with money for every lap led, and you led them all.
Yeah, it was 5,000 to win and $2,500 in lap money. So it was cool. Like they paid a lot. They had a lot of cars. There was a lot of people there. Like it was a big event. And like I said, we got to see a lot of fans too that we had never seen in that like karting community. So yeah, that like stuff like that, I really do enjoy. So definitely have it on my list, of a race to hit next year. I think they kind of try to do it every year, right before Chili Bowl. So, and it worked out perfectly, I think too, because it kind of distracted me before Chili Bowl, which was a good thing, because I sometimes tend to overthink a little bit. So like I just ran that, we won, we were on this high, and then 8 hours later we're in the expo, and we're in the biggest building in the country, running the biggest dirt race, or one of the biggest dirt races.
And that was your first time there, but your first time in a midget?
Yeah, so I got to run a couple practice laps right before. I flew out to North Carolina and ran, but I did like 60 laps, and then I went to Chili Bowl basically. So I did not have much seat time. But it was, like I said, it worked out perfectly, because I ran those 3 nights, and even though it was a kart race and something I do all the time, like I think when you just win, or like a weekend goes good, you're just kind of confident. And then I hopped in and I also just had ran the midget, maybe 10 or 15 days prior. So it worked out that I just had gotten those laps. I got in the car, won that kart race, then went to Chili Bowl practice the next day. So we raced on Saturday, then we practiced Sunday for Chili Bowl, and then raced the prelim night Monday. So like it was just back. It was like 5 nights in a row, but it was perfect because I was in the seat, and it just like I got it out of the way kind of. And it was the first night of the week too. So I feel like there's less people, less eyeballs. Like it's everyone kind of just seeing what to expect. So it worked out. It was just like I got my show done and on the road, and it was it was a great event. And that's another thing that now that we've done it, it's like you want to go back. You can't really you can't imagine not going now every year.
Yeah, that's a Chad Boat midget, right? Was he helpful?
Very helpful. Yeah, no, he sped up my learning curve like a ton. Builds very nice cars, great equipment. I think the indoor midget racing is very fun, and it's just different. Compared to maybe what the outdoor stuff is. It sounds like I never have went that route, but I had a blast. And I think what I enjoyed the most too is it really did feel similar to my outlaw cart. A lot of people had said that in the past, um, but it was true. Like I didn't, not that I didn't believe them, but you just don't really know what to expect. But I hopped in it. I'm like, man, this feels just like my outlaw card. I totally get why a lot of these kids hop in the Focus or the actual midgets and go and just go fast. Like it's very similar. And then the Chili Bowl, it's just such a great event. So like all of it combined was, you always want it to go a little bit better, but how it went for us like was a great experience. And I definitely wouldn't have traded doing it for anything.
So I don't picture you as being nervous. Maybe second guessing, like you said, but as far as nervousness, do you ever get nervous before a race?
I do a little bit, and I think I handle it all probably differently. And it really just depends on what it is. I think like the sprint car stuff, I actually don't get like I do get nervous. It's mainly right before qualifying is maybe when it would spike a little bit, just depending on where we're at. If it's a place like Tulare, one of the tougher places to go fast at, or that's more treacherous. Like, you're sitting in the staging lane at Tulare, and you're like, all right, man, I got to go rip a lap here. Like, this is going to be a little bit intense. I got to be up by the fence. But if it's like a place like Cottage Grove, sometimes we qualify there. It's basically wide open through the middle. Like it's just what you would always do. So I think a lot of that kind of plays a factor. And then when the bigger moments hit throughout the season, depending on like where you're sitting, like the night that we started on the front row at Trophy Cup, like I was definitely nervous because I was, who I was around, and I knew that it also was a big opportunity to potentially, go possibly win a race and run up front and get a good finish. But like, I think you're nervous, but like when I started 18th at Dirt Cup, I was happy to be I was just happy to be in the field. But like you don't, when you're kind of starting in the back, you just know that you might go forward or you might not. So I think it all just depends on the moments and how big the situations are. But anytime you start up front, you kind of want to win. But for me, I really only get nervous when it's these bigger moments where I feel like I'm definitely up against a much tougher challenge.
Wow. So any superstitions or good luck juju that you do, or
I do. I mean, nothing crazy. I do tend to tug on my gloves a lot. Like it's not necessarily a specific order or anything, but I notice that like when I watch my onboard. So usually what happens is like I do weird things in the car and then I notice it after. So like I don't have any superstitions. It's just what my body's like preparing for battle or whatever. One thing you notice if you watch my onboards, this is super embarrassing. It's funny, but I have a bad twitch. Like I actually get a really bad twitch right before I go green. Like I kind of like my head kind of just goes back and forth because I'm just like, it's like I'm getting excited, like I'm building up. I don't know, but I didn't ever notice I did that until I started watching my cameras. But so yeah, I kind of have a little bit of a twitch, and then in the staging lane a little bit, sometimes I just click my steering wheel, like I just a nervousness, like a movement, because I'm the type of person I don't really like to sit still anyway. So whenever like I don't like to get in my car too early because then I have to sit still. So usually I'm moving around a little bit to at least just get ready to get pushed off.
wow. Well, you're definitely a role model. I think your positive attitude and your sportsmanship, being an influencer now. How did the whole YouTube start?
So 2016 is when I posted my first video. It was like September, I think it was September 3rd or September 4th. Uh, and I probably always wanted to go that route, like have a YouTube channel. I had no idea it was going to be centered actually around what I love doing, racing. But like growing up, I feel like I was one of those kids that never really watched TV. Like 20 maybe 2012, 2013, 14, like YouTube started to become bigger. And I feel like I was like one of the first people really watching. And I started finding these people that like I had no idea who they were. I was just a younger kid, and I felt like started getting attached to them, like and their stories. And then like maybe, I found this guy that was really into trampolines, and he would do like crazy flips, and he would show you how to do it and like basically take you through his life and his journey of like becoming a professional flipper or whatever. And so it kind of dawned on me that maybe that since I was a race car driver, maybe people would find that as like a unique sport and cling on. And then at the same time, my mom was very encouraging that she thought that potentially that you know, like when I was younger, I didn't realize I had the gift of being able to speak a little bit, and I talked. But my mom, you know, being my mom, knew that, so she like was always pushing me that direction and like wanting me to have something. She didn't know it was going to be a YouTube channel, but she said I should have something that revolved around me, whether it was like a show or just something, even like just something. So I posted my first video, and you know, from there it kind of just, it didn't really spiral into anything big. It just like I just never really stopped doing it until like to this day I just haven't stopped doing it. And so like 2016 hit, I did the video, and then in 2017 I made like a deal with myself, was like I can't go a week without posting. So like basically since 2017 I've just posted a video at least every single week. And most times it's way more than that, but that was like the bare minimum. So back then I was posting like about 2 videos a week. And then as I've started racing more, like now it's more like 2 to 3 to 4, you know, maybe even 5. It just depends. But yeah, it just like you start doing it, and then you just end up, you know, some people start like watching, and kids are coming up to you at the races, and then like you realize you have a small audience. And it was also back when there wasn't as much dirt racing content, so I think that was helpful. But I think I didn't really even, being a younger kid, I didn't really even know what I was doing. I just was doing it, you know. And now
Yeah.
that I'm old, yeah, now that I'm older, like I've learned more of the ins and outs, you know, because for a while, like I said, I was basically just hitting record, filming a video. I just tried to make my videos like the people I like to watch, but with racing. And then I just post them, and it just, whatever happened, like, you know. But then as you get older, you start learning like a production, and, you know, how to do certain edits. And, you know, I have a lot of friends that are camera geeks and stuff like me. And so, you know, as you get older, you go that direction. But for a while, like I filmed my first video on an iPad, and then an iPhone, and then you film on a GoPro, and then, you know, so it's just like you just start learning, and you're just posting.
So do you do all the editing then yourself, or do you have help?
Yeah. Yeah, I have probably posted like 800 or 900 videos, and I've edited every single one of them. So I've like learned, I basically self-taught myself, like, and I use like simple software. I think it's like iMovie is what I started on, and then now I use something a little more complex. But basically, like, I would just edit the videos on my phone at first, and then like and then luckily we actually had an iMac in our house, because when my older sister was younger, she was gonna kind of get into that, and so we had one, but she ended up not using it, so it just sat there. So I learned that I could edit on that when I was probably 14 or 15. So I would upload all the footage and then edit it, and then I learned how to, you know, just put it straight on YouTube. So yeah, the whole process was mainly just myself learning, which I was very lucky, and then to have some help from some people. But yeah, I just learned to edit, and I enjoyed it too, so it makes it more worthwhile.
So have you kept the stats as far as how many followers you've had like each year, or where are you at right now?
Right now, we're at 63,000, somewhere almost 64, maybe. Yeah, I don't know the exact stats on. I probably should have kept better track of that. Like, I could look back through the timeline, but I don't know like when we hit each. But I always tell people, because like one of the questions I get asked if I go on a show is always like, "Man, this just like blew up," or this or that, and I always kind of say, "Well, I mean, it really never did. It was just actually more." When you kind of do something long enough, honestly, like, it kind of just had a consistent growth. There was never like one night I went to bed and I woke up with 10,000 more followers the next day. I mean, I wish that's how it worked, but
Yeah.
more, it was just like you have big videos here and there. And the racing thing is tough too. You know, it's a very niche community. You know, and it's probably harder for like a normal person necessarily to watch my video, because there's just so much going on. You know, if you don't know about dirt racing, like what's a heat race, what's an A main, what's qualifying, you know, what's it mean when a track's slick or tacky. And so like you also try to explain that too, you know, you want to bring them into that. But I think there's definitely a certain audience that my videos obviously are made for. And you hope to bring new people into the sport though, and get them hooked, and that's why you definitely try to do your best to kind of package it in for as many people as possible. But at the end of the day too, it's to follow our team specifically, and try to also use that to grow our team and take us to the levels that we want to be at one day.
You do really good at explaining. I mean, like you said, if you already know, you
Thank you.
know, but if you don't know, it really helps you. And it's got to be difficult maybe on a bad night, right?
Oh
You're
yeah.
a recap and now you have to share.
Yeah, I think it's gotten tougher. You know, once you have more people watching, it's more difficult, because, you know, for like me, you know, I know that there's going to be bad nights. So I feel like I've accepted that ahead of time, where some people, I could see like how, if maybe, you know, I guess how I should say is like, for as long as I've been doing it, like I just been through so many good and bad nights. But I could see as like once someone starts, it's much more difficult to kind of take that in. But yeah, you kind of just, I think the main thing is you just try to keep it as real as possible. Like I try not to sugarcoat too many things. It's like, look, if tonight I sucked, like I sucked, like, I don't need any advice on what I did wrong. I kind of already know what I did wrong or this or that. And but yeah, I think like what I was getting at is, as you get a little bit bigger, you obviously have more people watching. So for me, it's just like taking the good for the good and the bad for the bad. And also I realized too that I think I didn't get right away is, my viewers and just like other people that create content like that, people that love them, like they're riding the roller coaster with you. So you have to understand that actually when you're upset, they're upset too. Maybe not upset at you, but they're like upset because they want to win in a way. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like we're all kind of in this together.
Yeah.
So like the people that are connected to your content, so you kind of have to you package that in there as well. And that's why it's so cool when things go good. And like why, sometimes I find myself, of course I want to win for myself, but like I know the night at Trophy Cup when I ran second, it was so disappointing. It was like I actually wanted to win that race too, because I felt like that was going to be a win for all of us. Because like these people had stuck with me and put in this effort to be around for my content, like they wanted that big moment for them too. So like
Yeah.
I kind of try to incorporate that and think about that as I'm going about it.
Well, you come across very honest, and that's a genuine thing that I think people see and hear when you talk, and that's pretty
That's
cool.
cool.
You don't always get that.
Yeah, it's
From,
important.
uh,
I think it's easy in dirt racing and just in anything in general. But of course, it's always like it was that guy's fault or it was this guy's fault or my crew guy did this wrong, and that's all part of it. But I always try to look at things as like we're all in this together. And some nights, like I said, some nights, more nights than not, my car is going to be good and I'm going to make the mistakes. And then some nights, I'm going to be the best driver on the planet and my car wasn't good. So it's just part of how it goes. And this sport's so competitive nowadays too. A lot of us guys are in good stuff, and I mean the margin of being right there is like that. So that's why it's important to be as on it as you can and be perfect. Because usually the guy that just made that one less mistake is the guy that's winning.
yeah. Well, the qualifying times, just look at the qualifying times
Yeah,
and that small fraction of time between positions is crazy.
yeah,
So,
it's really impressive. It's really impressive.
so do you know who your followers are as far as age or demographic or gender?
I feel like it's a little bit difficult with my stuff just because on YouTube like they give you metrics, but unfortunately, like probably a lot of these kids, in order to have an account to like subscribe to people, I think you have to be a certain age. And so, like, obviously, most times these kids are putting a different age than they are because they're trying to, have an email or whatever. But I would say, like, for us, I actually think we have a little bit of a wider spread than most would probably see. Like, we have a lot of kids at the races, but like when we went on our trip to Chili Bowl, and I would say more in like the last, 2 years, my demographic to the older people have I've definitely noticed, which is really neat. And it's just different areas of the country. Like, of course, if we're at the kart races, like it's all kids, but a lot of the sprint car stuff, I've noticed that people that have just been more lifelong fans of the sport maybe came across my channel or stuff like that. But I would say we're pretty widespread across across the different age ranges. But it's really cool, young and old, that people watch this stuff. And the goal is hopefully to get the kids involved young, and then they can be with my channel and stuff, if they can watch and be a part of it, but also like get them involved in the sport, because the only way that we're going to continue growing this whole deal is if we can get kids involved young, because unfortunately there's a lot of other things that people can be doing nowadays with phones. And
Right. Right.
so like if we don't get these kids started in dirt racing at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, there's a good chance we kind of unfortunately lost them. But if you get them hooked young, when it's really cool and stuff, you keep them in the sport, and not only can they be drivers, they can be a car owner, they can be promoters, they could be fans, and they can be supporting it.
Can I ask you how old you are?
19.
Well, you carry yourself very professional
Thank you.
and very experienced. It's really really a nice pleasure to meet you that way. Um, I have a granddaughter who is, I would think she would say, even over her daddy, you're her number one fan.
That's
And
awesome.
it's pretty cool because she's only 5 years old, but she watches all of Tanner Holmes videos and Carly, and she wears the gear. And
What was
so
her name again?
Everly Heath.
Everly. I'm sure Everly's watching. Thank you, Everly.
You're going to make her a star in her kindergarten class tomorrow.
That's cool.
Oh my goodness. Well, And do you iRace then too?
Yeah, I actually, it's
Or
funny.
used
I
to?
like right here to my right, I have a steering wheel. I mean, I don't as much anymore. I mean, yeah, I've probably played like one time in the last 4 or 5 months. Just as things like it's hit or miss. Like during the season, maybe a little bit. During the winter, it'd be a little bit more. But we mainly got into it. I probably got into it in like 2017 or 18, but mainly hit it hard during the pandemic because there was nothing else to do. So like we just started
Right.
racing. Like we just wanted our fix. So you get on there and it's actually closer to real life than you would think. And I think that is helpful in some ways. I always tell people you can't really train the brain for racing unless you're on track. So like if you have a realistic game, it's more the mental side of things of like, you can be playing iRacing and you can be in second with 2 laps to go on a restart and like you have to make a move to win the race. So like you can't practice that kind of stuff sitting on your couch at home. So like that is a cool virtue of the game I always tell people about. But other than that, it's more just like for fun and here and there. But definitely, as I've gotten older, I don't really play any video games as much as I did when I was a kid.
You don't have any time.
No, unfortunately, no. I wish it's fun, but yeah.
Justin, do you have any other questions?
God, I don't think so. I was just listening to it. I had a lot to say, but I just let you go. I was
I'm
like,
sorry.
just talk, just talk. No, it's good. It's just reaction stuff. It's
You
good.
know what I like about your start of your videos? You always say, ladies and gentlemen. You
Oh
always
yeah,
say, hi, ladies and gentlemen, and then you update.
yeah,
Pretty cool.
yeah. I didn't even know. Yeah, I almost. It's funny. Like I always actually do enjoy talking to people that watch because there's a lot of feedback I get that I don't. You just get used to doing it, so that's very interesting to know.
Yeah. You want to say thank you to some of your sponsors, some of the people that help you?
Yeah, mainly thank you to all my fans, that support me. That there's a lot of people that have been riding with us since 17, 18, 19, that have stuck around and watched us through all the highs and the lows. We're getting ready to do some kart racing, so I'm always thankful for QRC and what they do for me. Another guy actually, this right here, Shane DeWald Trucking, they're hopping on the sprint car for this season as our primary sponsor, so it's going to be really cool to have them. And I'm just thankful for my family too, because without them, without my dad and without his buddy getting me that outlaw card, I probably I don't know what I'd be doing right now. So I definitely wouldn't be talking to you guys. So it's really cool that my family supported me this long and helped me get to where I am.
I saw your mom in your cart in your backyard
Yeah,
track. How fun
yeah,
was that?
that was neat. Yeah, we need to do that again. She did it twice. And why I wanted to do that was because it wasn't necessarily a shot at my parents, but like I wanted my mom and dad to drive a race car because I wanted them to know what it was like, so then they could maybe have some more empathy for me sometimes when I come off the track and did something wrong. So yeah, once she did that, which she knew it was going to be that way. It's obviously it's not easy to hop in any type of car, even if it's like a go kart. But she's like, yeah, I just can't believe you guys run these things wide open, and she was just like quarter throttle, just putting around. But yeah, there's definitely a lot that's going on. So I always tell people if you get the chance just to mud pack something or whatever, like it's really cool just to sit behind the wheel and you realize what's actually going on. It's no joke.
So, what's your best piece of advice to a young driver who's maybe doing micros or maybe getting into a limited, like you said? What would your best advice be?
I touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's mainly just like anybody getting involved or trying to work your way up, like just make connections and like learn as much as you can. If you really want to be, unfortunately nowadays the sport is definitely ran by funding and sponsorship and money. And this is how it is. It's just it's the name of the game. So I always tell people like don't be upset about that. Like either figure out you're basically gonna have to figure out a way to do it, or you're not gonna be able to do it. And of course everyone has different situations, but mainly connections and networking with people and like meeting people, because there's a lot of sponsors and people in the sport that want to help, and it's just like I always tell people, you could literally meet that one person at that one time. So it's that, and then it's also knowing all sides of the sport, not just being a good driver but learning about your race car if you can, even if that's something like, for me, being honest, that was something I was not naturally skilled at. My younger sister Carly, like she was born with a 9/16 wrench in her hand. I don't know how, but she was. And so she can work on a car. I don't just naturally, but for me, I had to like learn that skill. So it's knowing like what you're naturally good at and really taking advantage of that. For me, like that was more the talking and social media and stuff like that. And then like working on the car was a learned skill that I had to put time and effort in to gather. So yeah, it's about, you know, putting in the time. If you're not a racer and you want to be, like, go to the track, volunteer with the team. Teams need help. Teams need mud scrapers. They would love to show you, I'm sure, how to mount and dismount tires. There's plenty of jobs that aren't the most fun that a team would love to hand you. And if you put in that time, you know, that's a great way to work your way up through the sport. And maybe get a pit pass paid for or something like that. So I always tell kids to get involved with teams, meet people, and then also, if you are gifted with potentially using your cell phone, taking pictures, like, learn social media, because I think that's definitely the new way that our sport is going to go. We're in a very early stage, so it's not like anybody's missed the boat, but just the world in general is so heavily on our phones and on our screens with advertisement and promoting, like, you know, my one thing I would tell every track in America right now is, like, you need to be doing content, you need to be doing stuff to promote, because people are at some point are not going to show up to the races. There's just other things to do. So everything is on that. And that's, you know, it's like great that we're doing a show like this. It's very simple, and like, this is going to get out and it's going to get people excited to get to the races. So it's very important to be creating content around what you're doing, and just taking advantage of the opportunity of social media.
Justin, you have some closing words?
I don't think so. I agree with that though. Like, being, you know, at a certain point, a poster on a window at a gas station isn't going to get somebody to go to the racetrack. Like, showing that, like, I guess it'd be called a sizzle reel or something, of, like, you know, a shot of you at the racetrack, or the cars, or the fans, like, seeing a grandstand full of people having a good time. Like, that's going to get people a reaction. Like, I know last time when we were on here, it's like, you're selling an emotion. You are, like, you're selling the excitement of the races. Like, and especially, you know, like, I don't do social media like you, but at your level, like, people can watch your videos and they have never had to have been to a race before, and they already have somebody they're cheering for, or maybe they already bought a t-shirt or a hat or whatever. Like, you're planting that seed so early that, like, it doesn't matter that they don't even have maybe never seen a sprint car ever in their life, but you are the reason that they're there, and you're getting them there, and they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to tell their friends, and hey, go watch the video and whatever. Like, I met him, show him the picture, like, Everly tomorrow at school. You know what I like? It's growing it, and it's planting the seed in a way that, like, nobody else is doing. Like, I've seen other people try to just kind of do what you're doing, but it's not. Like, it's just you were the first. So, like, it's an organic growth, I guess. Like, it's growing. So, but you have 63,500 followers on YouTube, by the way. I looked it up, but
Cool.
it's
Okay, that's good.
yeah. So it's like, just so many people, and there's, like, you talked about the demographic stuff. Like, I've had people that I didn't even know that they knew what YouTube was, or, like, maybe don't even have a smartphone, and they're like, well, I was watching Tanner's video, and I'm like, you watched Tanner's video? They're like, yeah, like, you have to go watch it or whatever. So the demographic thing, like, huge spread, because these are, like, older guys, you know, that help on cars, or, like, maybe race themselves. But yeah, for sure, the growth of the sport and getting people having a real interest in going is, you know, and like, you connecting with them in the videos, and, like you said, following the roller coaster of your life, really, like, that gets them there, and they feel like they know you. So important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I think, Justin, when you were on last time too, you talked about what the tracks are missing are heroes. And I think both of you represent yourselves and the sport really, really well. And whether they're a little older and just watching from the recliner, or you got these young kids that they want to be just like you when they get older too, I think you're both doing a great job. So thank you very much. And I hope you get to the Midwest, but I can't wait to see you race when you're racing here on the West Coast.
For
And
sure.
we wish
No, it's
you
going to
the
be.
very best of luck.
Thank you. No, we'll definitely see you guys up at Dirt Cup and all those big races. I can't wait. It's gonna be cool to have the midgets and, you know, get to run with those guys too. And yeah, it's looking forward to big 2023.
All right. Well, thank you for taking a little over an hour of your time.
No, it's great.
Thank you, Justin, for helping. And
Yeah.
And we'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys at the track.
Okay, let's get you to 100,000.
I know. I need to get there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna keep working hard. Keep working hard.
Thank you guys both.
See ya.
Thank you.